Human soldier spent his fortune on a farm, then found an alien girl hanging inside. Until humans saved her. The stars above were cold, distant, and indifferent, just like the wars Elias Ward had fought in. The drop ship rattled as it broke through the thin atmosphere of Caro 9, a forgotten mining world no corporation had cared about in decades. Elias sat alone in the cockpit, one hand resting on the worn flight stick, the other gripping the deed ship he had nearly emptied his war pension to purchase. 40 hectares, one HAB unit, and whatever's left standing, he muttered to himself, a half-smile tugging at his lips. Home. The word tasted strange, alien, in its own right. Oh, the planet unfolded beneath him. Scarred plains, jagged mountains, rivers that glimmered like silver veins in the twilight. Once this had been a bustling outpost where prospectors dug for iridium and rare ores. Now silence ruled. Perfect. Silence was exactly what Elias craved. He had survived the Orion campaign, bled on worlds no one remembered, buried comrades under alien suns. And for what? Metals sat in drawers, gathering dust. The Federation had moved on. But Elias carried ghosts with him, faces of soldiers who hadn't come back, of a wife and son lost while he was light years away, fighting someone else's war. Caro 9 was supposed to be an ending, a place to disappear. The drop ship's thrusters whined as it settled on a cracked landing pad beside a weather-worn habitation block. Rusted metal shutters hung half-closed, and wind howled through broken vents. The place looked abandoned, just as the listing had promised. Elias powered down the ship, grabbed his rifle out of habit, and stepped onto the barren soil. Thin red dust swirled around his boots. The air smelled metallic, sharp with ozone. His shoulders loosened. Not beautiful, but it's mine. He crossed the yard, eyes scanning instinctively. Soldier reflexes he'd never quite shaken. At first he thought the shape beneath the ancient comms mast was just more scrap, but then his stomach clenched. A body hung there. For a frozen heartbeat, Elias couldn't move. The silhouette swayed in the hot wind, unmistakable. Limbs bound, a rope biting deep into the throat. Not possible. This world is empty. Training took over. He moved forward, rifle raised, senses narrowed to the rhythm of his breathing. Closer now, the figure was not human. The limbs were too long, the skin faintly luminous, almost silver under the weak sun. And the eyes, when they fluttered open, glowed with a desperate alien light. She was still alive. Hell, Elias growled, dropping the rifle. He sprinted forward, knife flashing from his belt. With one hard slice, the rope parted, and the figure collapsed into his arms, heavier than he expected. 7 feet tall at least, all muscle and sinew, yet fragile in the way her chest hitched for breath. Her skin was hot, fevered. Faint markings, like bioluminescent tattoos, ran along her neck where the rope had burned her. She coughed, voice breaking into a wheeze that sounded half liquid, half song. Easy, Elias murmured, lowering her onto the dusty ground. He tilted his canteen to her lips. Water slid down, some spilling across her jaw, but enough reached her throat. Her eyes focused on him then, silver irises ringed with cobalt fire. Not hate, not alien fury, just a plea. It punched straight through his armor of indifference, because he'd seen eyes like that before. His boys, fever-glazed, reaching for him in a hospital bed light years away while Elias was off winning battles for men who didn't care. Not this time, he whispered. She gasped, a word spilling out in broken standard. Please, don't. Let them. A cough racked her. Elias gathered her in his arms and carried her toward the HAB. Inside, the place was sparse but not empty. Tools neatly stored, a bedroll in the corner, half-burned fuel cells stacked by the wall. Someone had lived here, recently. He laid her on the cot, then searched for med supplies. A cracked kit yielded antiseptic foam and a roll of synth gauze. He worked methodically, wrapping her neck, cooling her fevered skin with damp cloth. Soldiers' hands trained to patch wounds under fire. Finally, her breathing steadied. She blinked up at him. Her voice was rough, guttural, but clear enough. Serenia. Elias sat back. Elias Ward. Her lips trembled. A bitter laugh in another tongue before she switched back to standard. He sold me. Said I was payment. Who? Ralvek. The name came out like venom. Commander of the syndicate. This world is collateral. I was collateral. Elias's jaw tightened. The man who had sold him this land through a broker in a deal that had felt too cheap, too easy, hadn't told him about this. A living person tied up like livestock. You're not payment, Elias said flatly. Not property either. Her luminous eyes searched his face, suspicion and confusion warring with something else. Hope. Before he could say more, motion outside caught his attention. The hair on his neck prickled. He killed the light and went to the window, rifle ready. Dust trails shimmered against the horizon. At least 4, maybe 5 hoverbikes, approaching fast. Headlamps cut through the twilight like hunting eyes. Serenia's breath hitched. Ralvek's men, they come back for my body. Elias's muscles coiled, instincts honed by 100 firefights sliding back into place like a familiar weapon. He counted the shapes, the distance, the angles of approach. Professional, armed. He glanced back at Serenia. She tried to rise, but her strength failed. Still, she whispered fiercely, Go, leave me. If they find you, they kill you too. Elias shook his head. Not my style. He loaded the rifle, chamber clicking home with a sound that filled the silent hab like thunder. Yo, this is my land now, he said quietly. They want it. They'll have to talk to me. Outside, engines roared closer. The hoverbikes fanned out, torches blazing. At their head rode a tall figure in a black coat, face scarred by some old plasma burn, eyes glowing red behind augmented lenses. The voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Well, well, someone cut down our trophy, and someone new squatting on our ground. Come on out, soldier boy. Let's have a civilized chat. Elias breathed out slowly. War had followed him after all, and maybe, just maybe, this was the fight he'd been waiting for. He glanced back at Serenia. She clutched the blanket to her throat, eyes wide with fear, but blazing with defiance. They'll try, Elias told her, his voice calm as stone. But they won't take you. Not while I'm here. The hab's lights winked out completely as Elias stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, shadows swallowing him whole. Engines growled in the darkness. The 5 hoverbikes circled the homestead like predators, their torchlights slicing through the night. Dust plumes rose in glowing arcs, casting the riders into silhouettes of steel and menace. Elias Ward stood on the porch, rifle loose at his side, posture relaxed. Ready. He had learned long ago that fear gave enemies power. Calm was its own weapon. The leader dismounted with practiced arrogance, coattails sweeping as he strode forward. The scar across his jaw caught the firelight, his augmented eyes burning red. His voice boomed, amplified by a throat modulator. You must be the new owner. Bought yourself a dead world. He grinned, teeth yellow against the glow. Name's Ralvek, commander of this territory. Elias kept his voice level. Elias Ward, this is my land, purchased legal. State your business. Ralvek's grin widened. He produced a data pad, flicking it open with a theatrical snap. Paperwork's cute, soldier, but paper doesn't mean much this far from Federation courts. Out here, law's written by strength. He jabbed a finger toward the comms mast where the rope still swayed. And strength says you've stolen syndicate property. That alien female. She was collateral against Kane's debt. She belongs to us. Behind Elias, Serenia stirred. She had managed to rise to the doorway, one hand gripping the frame, silver skin gleaming faintly in the dark. Her eyes burned with fury, though her body trembled from exhaustion. I am not property, she rasped, voice carrying more fire than her strength should have allowed. Ralvek's gaze flicked to her. He tilted his head, studying her like livestock. Still alive? Impressive, but irrelevant. You're a curiosity, girl. Rare genetics. Off-world collectors will pay more than this rock is worth. And Kane, poor fool, pledged you to settle his gambling debts. Signed the transfer himself. Elias felt anger settle in his gut like ice. Kane's deal isn't mine. I bought this land, every hectare, and she stays here. Free. The riders chuckled darkly. Ralvek's smile vanished. You misunderstand. You have 7 days. Pay Kane's debt, 5,000 credits, or deliver the alien. Refuse and we take both, along with your head. 5,000, Elias repeated, his voice calm though rage burned beneath. More than this world's worth. Ralvek stepped closer, menace radiating from him. That's the price of survival. Think carefully, soldier. The syndicate doesn't forget. 7 days. He snapped his fingers. The riders revved their engines, encircling once more before streaking off into the night, torches dwindling to embers on the horizon. Silence returned. Elias lowered his rifle slowly. His knuckles were white against the stock. Behind him, Serenia whispered, You should have let me die. Now they will kill you too. Elias turned, meeting her gaze. They'll try. Inside, the hab felt smaller, walls pressing in around them. Elias set the rifle down, then poured water into a chipped cup. Serenia took it with trembling hands, sipping as though each drop might vanish. Her voice, when it came, was raw. I warned you. Ralvek does not bluff. He serves judge syndics of the Corps. Their reach is long. Once they mark you, they do not stop. Elias leaned against the table, studying her. Then tell me everything. Who are they? And why were you strung up like a scarecrow? Serenia's shoulders squared despite her exhaustion. She was taller than him, even sitting down, her frame built for strength yet marked with scars that told of years in chains. My people called ourselves Vayari. We lived in harmony with the river moons of Listen. Tall, strong, yes, but no warriors. When the syndicate came, they saw us as specimens, rare, exotic, not human. Her lip curled with bitterness. They filed their papers, bribed their scientists, declared us a subspecies, not entitled to Federation protections. Elias cursed under his breath. He had seen it before. Slavers twisting laws, erasing personhood with a signature. They captured me when I was 17, Serenia continued, her voice steadier now. Kane bought me, claimed he would give me a place here. He said my strength would keep his farm alive. Instead, he filed ownership codes, branded me. When he lost too much to Ralvek, he gave me over as payment. Ralvek tried to hang me for sport before leaving. Said I wasn't human enough for it to count as murder. Her luminous eyes found Elias again, fierce despite the tears brimming there. That is what you stepped into, a debt written in my blood. Elias was silent a long time, jaw tight, memories pressing close. He had seen prisoners strung from alien trees, comrades executed on orders of officers who called it discipline. He had vowed never again to watch without acting. Finally, he said, Then we don't run, we fight. Her laugh was hollow, disbelieving. Fight them? You saw their weapons, their fleet. What are we? 2 broken souls against the syndicate? Elias pushed away from the table, pacing like a caged predator. Not just us, you know this land. Kane left signs of life everywhere, fields tended, tools maintained. There are others here, settlers, outcasts, people Ralvek has tried to crush. Maybe they're waiting for someone to stand first. She tilted her head, studying him. And you think that someone is you? I don't know. Elias's voice softened. But I know what happens if no one does. For a long time, silence filled the hab. Wind whispered through the vents. Finally, Serenia spoke, voice gentler than before. Why did you cut me down, Elias Ward? Why risk your life for me? He looked at her then, really looked. Her silver eyes glimmered like stars reflected in water. For a moment, the ghosts of his wife and son flickered in memory, faces he had failed to save. "Because once I stood by while people I loved died," he said quietly. "I swore I'd never let it happen again. Not if I could stop it. You needed saving. That was enough." Something shifted in her expression. Wariness giving way to the faintest spark of trust. They worked through the night. Elias scavenged supplies, securing windows, reinforcing doors. Serenia, despite her injuries, insisted on helping, her strength returning in bursts. She showed him a trap door hidden beneath the floorboards. "Cain built a cellar," she explained. "He was paranoid, kept things hidden, weapons, papers. Together they pried it open." The air inside was musty, but the contents made Elias's eyes narrow. Crates of energy cells, racks of rifles, maps scrawled with syndicate emblems. A ledger filled with coded entries. Credits transferred, bribes paid, debts accrued. Elias whistled low. Cain wasn't just a farmer. He was a syndicate quartermaster. Serenia nodded grimly. "That is why Ralvek wants this land. Not the soil, not the house, the caches, proof of corruption. Evidence that could damn them if it reached the right hands." Elias tucked the ledger under his arm. "Then we've got leverage." Dawn crept over Caro 9, painting the sky in pale lavender. Elias stood outside, scanning the horizon with binoculars. Serenia joined him, her tall frame outlined against the rising sun. She wore one of his spare jackets, sleeves too short for her long arms. But she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Ralvek will return sooner than 7 days," she said softly. "They want to break you before you find allies." Elias adjusted the binoculars. "Then we don't wait. Today I head into town. See who's willing to talk, who's too afraid. Maybe find someone who hates the syndicate enough to stand." Her eyes widened. "You can't. They will recognize you. You'll be marked." He gave a small, grim smile. "They already know who I am. Better to face it head on." For a moment, Serenia was silent. Then she touched his arm lightly, hesitantly. Her hand was warm, her grip strong despite the gentleness. "Be careful, Elias Ward," she murmured. "If you fall, I have nothing left." The words struck deeper than he expected. He covered her hand with his own, meeting her gaze. "I'll come back. Count on it." Inside, before leaving, he checked his sidearm and rifle, packed rations, and slipped the incriminating ledger into his satchel. Serenia watched from the doorway, hair stirring in the wind, silver eyes unreadable. As he mounted his old hoverbike, she called after him, voice fierce. "You cut me down when others would have walked away. I will not forget. Whatever comes, I will fight beside you." Elias nodded once, then gunned the engine. Dust rose in a crimson cloud as he sped toward the horizon, toward the Syndicate Rules settlement of Redemption Outpost. The battle for Caro 9 had already begun. The road to Redemption Outpost cut like a scar through Caro 9's barren plains. Elias Ward leaned low over the hoverbike, dust streaming behind him. Each rise of the land brought new ghosts from his soldiering days. Ambush sites, kill zones, terrain turned to slaughter fields. He forced them back. He wasn't here to fight a war. Not yet. The town appeared just before noon, a cluster of steel prefab buildings huddled around a central spire. Old mining conveyors rusted in the distance, skeletal reminders of the boom years. Redemption had once promised prosperity. Now it reeked of syndicate control. Elias slowed, dismounting near the market square. Locals bustled, traders, prospectors, weary settlers. But the air carried an unnatural stillness, as though every conversation was filtered through invisible ears. Syndicate patrol drones drifted above, optics sweeping. 2 armored enforcers lounged by the bar, rifles across their knees. Elias adjusted his hat, hiding his face in the shadow, and walked with deliberate calm toward the sheriff's office. If Redemption had any shred of law left, it would be here. The office was squat and dimly lit, walls lined with faded wanted posters. Behind a desk sat an older man, hair white, mustache yellowed from cheap tobacco. His eyes, though, were sharp as a hawk's. "You're new," the sheriff said flatly, "and you walk like a soldier." Elias gave a small nod. "Elias Ward, bought Kane's land west of here." Something flickered in the man's gaze. Recognition, concern. "Name's Miller, sheriff, at least on paper." "Guessing you've already had visitors?" "Ralvek, him and his riders, claimed the alien woman on my land belongs to him. Gave me 7 days to pay 5,000 credits or hand her over." Miller leaned back, chair creaking. "Same game he's run before. Kane wasn't his first mark. He pledges land as collateral, sells it cheap, then lets the syndicate come calling. Buyer either pays or dies." His jaw tightened. "You're just the latest." Elias studied him. "And you've done nothing to stop it?" Miller's eyes hardened. "You a lawman, Ward? Ever tried upholding justice when the judge, the bank, and half the town answered to the syndicate? I've got grandkids here. I pick my battles carefully." Elias respected the honesty, even if it left bile in his throat. "Tell me about Ralvek, about Judge Syndic Harrow." Miller lowered his voice. "Harrow came after the war, former officer, mean as they come, built himself a court, a bank, and a private army. Calls it the Reconstruction Association, sounds civilized, but it's just syndicate men grabbing power. Ralvek's his enforcer, scarred devil with no conscience. 6 killings I know of, all rule justified." Elias absorbed it, pieces falling into place. Kane hadn't just been crooked. He'd been a cog in something larger. "And Serenia?" Elias asked. "The woman Kane left to hang." Miller frowned. "The alien giant? Thought she died years ago. Kane kept her hidden, filed papers declaring her non-human property. She's alive. Kane tried to kill her before he ran." The sheriff let out a low whistle. "Well, that explains Ralvek's interest. Kane must have promised her as payment." He shook his head. "You've stepped into a nest of hornets, Ward." Elias leaned forward, voice low and hard. "Then tell me where I can find allies who aren't afraid of hornets." The bank stood at the far end of Main Street, ostentatious, with red brick and white columns. Elias entered quietly, noting the armed guard near the door. The tellers worked in stiff silence. One of them, an elderly woman with sharp eyes behind wire spectacles, looked up as he approached. "You must be Ward," she murmured softly, too low for others to hear. "Martha Henderson." Word travels fast. Elias inclined his head. "I need to know Kane's dealings, his debts, his ties to Harrow." She slid a folded paper across the counter, her expression cool. "The church bell rings at 3. Meet me there, come alone." Then louder for the benefit of watching ears. "I'm afraid account information is confidential, sir. You'll need to speak with the manager." A younger man, Harrow's nephew by the resemblance, stepped out of the office then, smiling thinly. "Mr. Ward, I insist we discuss your property soon." Elias tipped his hat. "Another time." He left before the man could argue, tucking Martha's note into his coat. The church stood apart from the town, white-clappered, weathered by years of dust. Its bell tolled 3 as Elias slipped inside. Sunlight filtered through simple stained glass, painting fractured colors on the pews. Martha waited in the back, posture straight, hands folded. Beside her stood Pastor Collins, a kindly-eyed man whose calm carried quiet steel. "We can speak here," Martha said, leading him into the study. The room smelled of leather and old paper. "Why are you helping me?" Elias asked directly. Martha's face hardened. "Because I've seen too many good families broken by Harrow's men. My son died fighting so people wouldn't be property again. I won't watch it return." She opened her bag and pulled out a map, properties marked in red ink, forming a path straight through Caronine's valleys. Elias's land circled prominently. "Harrow is buying up territory along the proposed trade route," she explained. "Your farm sits at the critical juncture. Cain betrayed him by selling it to you. Now Harrow means to take it back and make an example of you. Elias studied the map, a soldier's mind parsing logistics. In Serenia, Cain claimed her as a specimen, but she's a person. The syndicate doesn't care. Harrow's men profit from treating her otherwise. Elias's grip tightened. They won't take her. Not while I stand. Pastor Collins laid a hand on his arm. You won't stand alone. There are settlers, farmers, traders, who've resisted quietly. But they lack leadership, someone with courage, with training. Elias almost laughed, bitter. I came here to bury war, not lead another one. Sometimes, the pastor said gently, war finds us anyway. That evening, Elias rode back hard. The sun dipped low, casting crimson across the plains. His chest tightened with each mile. He expected to see smoke, ruins, Serenia taken. But the homestead still stood, its chimney puffing a thin trail. Relief struck deeper than he'd admit. Serenia met him outside, rifle in hand, tall frame outlined against the glow. You came back, she said simply, though her voice carried a wealth of relief. Didn't doubt it, Elias replied. Inside, he spread Martha's map and the ledger across the table. Serenia leaned over, tracing the markings with long fingers. They want control of the entire corridor, she said. This world is more valuable than I realized. Elias nodded. And Cain kept records. Every bribe, every order. Enough to ruin Harrow if it reached the Federation. Serenia's lips curved in something between a smile and disbelief. You speak as if you mean to fight. Elias met her gaze. I won't hand you over, and I won't abandon this land. That means fighting. For a long moment, they simply looked at one another. Something unspoken bridged the silence. Trust, fragile but growing. Then glass shattered. A flaming arrow slammed through the window, embedding in the table between them. Flames licked across the maps. Serenia reacted instantly, grabbing the water bucket and dousing the fire. Smoke curled, choking. Elias lunged to the window, rifle ready. A lone rider stood at the ridge, silhouetted against the darkening sky. He raised a hand in mocking salute, then sped away. Elias unrolled the charred shaft. A note scrawled in bold hand clung to the wood. This is just the beginning. Leave now or burn. Serenia's face was pale in the lamplight. They're not waiting 7 days. No, Elias said grimly, jaw tightening. They never were, which means we prepare now. That night they didn't sleep. Elias moved through the house with soldier's precision, reinforcing walls, laying tripwires, setting fallback routes. Serenia walked beside him, steady despite exhaustion. She showed him Cain's hidden tunnel beneath the root cellar, leading out near the oak where she'd nearly died. He built it as escape, she said quietly. He never used it. Elias ran his hand along the stone. Then we will, if needed. When they paused to rest, Serenia sat near the fire, her height dwarfing the chair. She looked at him with something softer than before. You risk everything for me, she said quietly. Why? Elias hesitated. Then, because you deserve more than chains. Because no one should decide whether you live or die with the stroke of a pen. He met her eyes steady. And because if I run now, I'll lose the last piece of myself worth keeping. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she reached across the table, her hand brushing his. For a soldier used to blood and ash, the touch was shockingly warm. Neither pulled away. Outside, the plains were quiet, but Elias knew the storm was coming, and this time he would not retreat. Morning broke over Caro 9 like a warning shot. Hard, red light spilling across the plains, the sky jagged with thin clouds that looked like scars. Elias Ward stood outside the homestead, rifle slung across his back, scanning the horizon with eyes sharpened by years of soldiering. Ralvek's rider hadn't delivered a bluff. That flaming arrow in the night was just the first test. Elias knew what came next. Pressure, harassment, fear. They would wear him down until surrender seemed merciful. But he had fought empires. He had buried comrades. He had nothing left to lose. And for the first time in years, he had something worth protecting. Serenia, the alien woman, emerged from the house, hair glinting silver in the harsh sun. She carried Kane's old rifle as though it weighed nothing, her tall frame powerful, despite the bruises still healing around her neck. "They will strike again," she said simply. "They will," Elias agreed. He turned to her, voice steady. "Which is why we can't do this alone. We need allies, settlers who bent their necks under Harrow's boot long enough, the ones waiting for a chance to resist." Serenia's luminous eyes studied him, both skeptical and hopeful. "You think they will fight?" Elias gave a grim half-smile. "They'll fight if someone shows them how." By mid-morning, they rode together toward the town outskirts. Serenia rode behind him on the hoverbike, her height forcing her to crouch awkwardly. Yet her presence at his back filled him with strange strength. Their destination wasn't Redemption Outpost proper, but a cluster of half-abandoned farms in the low valley. Elias remembered Miller's words, "Pick your battles carefully." These settlers had little to lose, prime ground for recruiting. They found the first farmstead shuttered, fields gone to weeds, but the second hummed faintly with life. Chickens scratched in the dirt, and a weathered man worked a hand plow, sweat glistening on his brow. When Elias dismounted, the man straightened warily, hand near the old revolver at his belt. "Strangers don't last long here," he warned. "Name's Ward," Elias said calmly. "Bought Kane's land." Recognition flickered. The man's grip tightened. "Then you're already dead. Ralvek won't let you keep it." Serenia stepped forward then, her silver eyes fierce. "Ralvek strung me up like an animal. Elias cut me down. We will not bow." The man blinked at her, astonishment plain. Then slowly he nodded. "You're the giant woman Kane kept. Thought you were just a tale." "Not a tale," Elias said. "And not property. I need fighters, men and women who've had enough." "You know anyone like that?" The farmer spat into the dust. "Plenty, but talk is easy. Ralvek burns anyone who resists. You bring proof or weapons, maybe people will listen." Elias pulled the ledger from his satchel, flipping it open. "Proof enough?" The man skimmed a page. His eyes hardened. "That ledger damns Harrow himself." Elias tucked it away, then spread word. "Tonight, my homestead. We plan." The man hesitated, then nodded once. "Name's Darren. I'll be there." By dusk, half a dozen settlers gathered in Elias's cellar. The air was thick with dust and tension, lanterns casting long shadows. Martha Henderson arrived too, bringing with her a crate of ration packs and a sidearm she handled with practiced ease. Pastor Collins came quietly, Bible in one hand, an old shotgun in the other. Even Sheriff Miller slipped in, eyes darting as if the walls themselves might report him. Serenia stood tall among them, a living rebuke to the syndicate's lies. Some gawked, others muttered uneasily, but none could deny the fire in her gaze. Elias spread the ledger and map across the table. "You know why you're here. Ralvek's coming for me, and for her." He nodded to Serenia. "But this isn't just my fight. Harrow means to own this whole corridor. Once he controls it, none of you will be free again." He tapped the ledger. "This is our weapon, proof of his corruption. If we get it to Federation channels, Harrow burns. But first we survive. That means training, preparing, and standing together." Silence stretched. Then Martha spoke, voice firm. "I lost my son to men like Harrow. I won't see his sacrifice wasted. I'll stand." Pastor Collins followed, his tone quiet but iron hard. "The good book says the truth shall set us free. Sometimes truth needs a rifle beside it. I'll stand too." Darren muttered a curse, then slapped his hat on the table. "Damn it all, I'm tired of being afraid. Count me in." One by one, hands rose. Sheriff Miller's last, his jaw clenched. "You'll get us all killed," he growled, then softer. "But better that than living like dogs." "I'm with you." Elias's chest tightened. For years he'd run from battles. Now people looked to him again, not as soldier, but as leader. He nodded once. Then we start tomorrow. The following days blurred into hard labor. Elias drilled the settlers in basic formations, teaching them to handle rifles with discipline instead of panic. Serenia astonished them all, lifting crates single-handedly, practicing with a long staff until her strikes cracked stone. Children peeked from doorways to watch her, eyes wide. At night, Elias and Serenia worked side by side, laying traps, setting signal flares, preparing fallback routes. Often their hands brushed, or their eyes met across the firelight, lingering longer each time. One evening, after hours of training, Elias found Serenia standing alone outside, gazing at the stars. Her silver skin shimmered faintly under the moons. "You should rest," he said gently. "I do not need much," she replied. Her voice was softer than usual. "My people believe the stars held the souls of those who passed. Sometimes I think I see my mother among them." Elias stood beside her, the silence comfortable. "I used to believe that too, about my wife and son." Serenia turned to him, eyes luminous with understanding. "They are why you fight," he nodded. "And you. I fight because you cut me down when I was nothing but a corpse to others. You gave me back choice. I owe you more than life." Elias met her gaze, words caught in his throat. Something deeper than gratitude lived there now, something he hadn't dared feel since loss hollowed him. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The truce of preparation shattered on the fourth night. It began with a distant rumble. Elias bolted upright from his cot, instinct screaming. He grabbed his rifle, raced outside. On the horizon, engines glowed. Hover bikes, a half dozen at least, streaking toward the homestead. "Positions!" Elias barked. Settlers scrambled from the cellar, weapons ready. Martha dragged the children to cover. Miller took the roof, shotgun braced. Serenia stepped beside Elias, her staff in hand, taller than any of them, eyes burning silver white. The syndicate riders circled the homestead, torches blazing, whooping like wolves. One hurled a firebomb that burst against the wall, flames licking upward. Settlers doused it frantically. Ralvik wasn't with them, just his men, testing the defenses. But their cruelty was no less. Shots cracked, bullets whining off reinforced shutters. A settler screamed, clutching his leg. Elias snapped orders, his voice steady as if back on the battlefield. "Hold fire! Wait for clear shots! Don't waste ammo!" The riders pressed closer. Elias raised his rifle, squeezed off 2 rounds. One rider tumbled from his bike, sparks trailing. Miller's shotgun roared from above, dropping another. Serenia leapt forward, impossibly fast, staff sweeping one rider clean off his machine. He spun, eyes blazing, striking again and again until the bike toppled in flames. The settlers stared in awe. The remaining riders faltered. Their taunts turned to curses. Then, as one, they broke off, retreating into the night. The homestead stood battered but unbroken. Elias lowered his rifle, chest heaving. "They were probing us," he muttered, "seeing if we'd break." Serenia wiped blood from her cheek, eyes still alight. They saw strength instead. The settlers gathered around, voices hushed but fierce. For the first time they believed. Later, as the fires were stamped out and the wounded tended, Elias sat on the porch, staring into the darkness. Serenia joined him, lowering her tall frame beside his. "You led them well," she said. Elias shook his head. "I led men into death before. I don't want to repeat it." "You gave them hope," Serenia countered softly. "Hope is stronger than fear." He looked at her, at the bruises fading on her luminous skin, the strength coiled in her every movement. "And you gave them something else. Proof that the syndicate's lies are just that. They call you property. But tonight, you were their shield." Her hand found his again, deliberate this time. "Not their shield. Yours." The words struck deeper than any bullet. Elias squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise forming between them. In the distance, the night was quiet. Too quiet. The syndicate wasn't done. Ralvik himself would come next, and he would come hard. Elias knew the storm was only beginning, but for the first time he didn't face it alone. 3 nights after the skirmish, the horizon burned. Elias Ward stood on the roof of the homestead, binoculars pressed to his eyes. A column of engines cut through the darkness, their glow like fire crawling across the plain. Not 5 or 6 riders this time, dozens, trucks, hover bikes, armored carriers. At their head rode Ralvek himself, coats snapping in the wind, augments gleaming crimson. "They're coming," Elias said quietly. Below, the settlers braced themselves. Miller barked orders from the barricades. Martha passed ammunition with steady hands. Pastor Collins knelt in the dirt, murmuring prayers as he loaded his shotgun. Fear rippled through them, yes, but alongside it, something fiercer. Resolve. Serenia emerged from the cellar, carrying a weapon Kane had hidden in the caches, a massive plasma spear, taller than most men. Its power cell hummed with pale light, echoing her own bioluminescent markings. She looked like a figure out of legend, warrior and avenger both. Elias climbed down to meet her. For a moment, the storm paused around them. "They'll try to break us tonight," he said. Serenia's silver eyes met his. "Then tonight, we do not break." The syndicate column halted just beyond rifle range. Ralvek dismounted, boots crunching on the dust. His voice boomed through an amplifier, dripping arrogance. "Ward, you've made quite the spectacle. Training peasants, hiding property, killing my men. Enough games. Deliver the alien and the ledger, and I'll leave you a grave instead of ash." Elias stepped forward onto the barricade, rifle at his side, voice steady. "This land is mine. These people are free. Serenia is free. If you want any of that, you'll have to take it." A ripple of defiance ran through the settlers. They raised their weapons, faces hard. Ralvek's smile curdled into a snarl. He raised his hand. "Burn them all!" The night exploded. Syndicate bikes roared forward, torches flaring. Gunfire cracked, red streaks tearing across the barricades. Settlers returned fire, bullets sparking off steel, some finding flesh. The air filled with smoke, dust, and screams. Elias moved like a machine, rifle bucking against his shoulder. Each shot deliberate, precise, one rider down, another. He barked orders, shifting defenders where the line faltered. Serenia was a storm unto herself. Plasma spear blazing, she met the riders head-on, striking with inhuman strength. Each blow sent bikes tumbling, metal shrieking, fire erupting. Her markings glowed brighter with each strike, as if the weapon awakened something within her. Dull, but the syndicate had numbers. Trucks slammed into the barricades, disgorging armored troops. Settlers fell back, fear gnawing at their resolve. Ralvek strode through the chaos, plasma pistol in one hand, sword in the other. His eyes locked on Serenia. "You should have stayed on the rope," he growled. She bared her teeth, spear humming. "Come and try again." They clashed in a blaze of light and steel. Ralvek's augment strength met Serenia's raw power, each strike shaking the ground. Sparks lit the battlefield, their duel a storm within a storm. Elias fought his way toward them, cutting through syndicate troops with grim precision. He saw Serenia stagger, Ralvek's blade cutting across her arm. She cried out but held her ground. Elias raised his rifle, but a syndicate soldier slammed into him, knocking it aside. They grappled, fists and knives. Elias fighting with the brutal efficiency of a soldier who had seen too many close deaths. He killed the man, ripped free, and pressed on. The settlers wavered under the assault. Fire spread across the homestead, shadows writhing. Miller took a shot to the shoulder, but kept firing. Martha dragged a wounded boy to cover. Pastor Collins stood in the open, blasting his shotgun until it clicked empty, then swung it like a club. Elias reached Serenia just as Ralvek drove her back against the barricade. Blood streaked her silver skin, but her eyes burned with unyielding light. Ralvek sneered. "She's strong, Ward, but not enough." Elias leveled his rifle. "That's why she's not alone." He fired. The round punched into Ralvek's chest, staggering him. Serenia seized the moment, driving her plasma spear through his augment. Light flared, searing bright. Ralvek screamed, convulsing as his enhancements fried. With a final cry, Serenia wrenched the spear free. Ralvek collapsed, smoke rising from his body. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then a syndicate soldier shouted, "Commanders down!" Panic rippled through their ranks. Without Ralvek's command, discipline faltered. Settlers surged forward, rallying with newfound fury. Gunfire roared, blades clashed, and one by one the syndicate broke, retreating into the night. Engines screamed as they fled, leaving their dead and dying behind. The battlefield stilled. Smoke rose from burning barricades. The ground was littered with corpses, human and machine alike. But the homestead stood, and so did they. Elias leaned heavily on his rifle, chest heaving. Pain burned across his side where a blade had caught him, but he ignored it. His eyes found Serenia. She stood tall despite her wounds, spear still glowing faintly. Blood streaked down her arm. She met his gaze, and for a moment, nothing else existed. "It's over," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not yet. Ralvek's just one head of the beast. Harrow will come. The syndicate won't stop until the ledger burns." Serenia stepped closer, her height casting shadow over him. She touched his face gently, her hand warm despite the blood. "Then we fight them. Together." Elias caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. For years he had lived with ghosts, with loss that hollowed him. But in her eyes he saw something new. A future. "I buried my family once," he said softly. "I can't bring them back, but I can choose not to lose again. Not you." Her lips curved into something fragile, fierce and utterly alive. She bent toward him, and their foreheads touched, soldier and alien, scarred souls finding something worth holding on to. Around them, settlers cheered, voices rising with ragged triumph. For the first time in years, Redemption Outpost had defied its chains. Elias raised the ledger high, smoke swirling around him. "This is the truth," he shouted, "and tonight we proved it. They can bleed, they can fall, and we are not property. We are free." The settlers roared, their voices carrying across the plain. Later, as the fires were doused and the dead buried, Elias and Serenia stood on the ridge, watching the dawn creep over Caro 9. "They'll come again," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "And we'll be ready, because tonight we lit something they can't kill." "What's that?" He turned to her, hand finding hers, fingers intertwining. "Hope." She smiled, silver eyes glowing in the new sun. "Then hope will be our weapon." Together they stood as the light spread, two broken souls, no longer alone. And somewhere in the distance, the syndicate felt the shift. The day of reckoning had begun.